Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready for me to start. Okay, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and I want to say thank you to ENMU and the library for inviting me to join you for your cosplay um, program, I guess. I'm really excited that you guys are doing this. I would have loved something like this when I was in college. So the focus of today's session is going to be on cosplay etiquette and photography and how those two things interplay. So to introduce myself, my name is Becky. You can find me on Instagram at House Courington, which Game of Thrones was really big when I was picking that handle. I didn't think about how hard my last name is to spell. It's probably up there on the screen, but I can also send it to Regina and have her post it somewhere if you want to give me a follow. Or if you're like, oh man, that lady didn't know what she was talking about, don't worry about it. So I have been a cosplayer since 2001. I assume that given this is a college setting, probably some of you were not alive then. So feel free to think of me as your cosplay mom. I am here to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and is having fun and hydrated. So make sure you always have access to some water. Uh, but I love what the cosplay community has built over the last 20 years. I love the way that it's grown. It's very special. And usually when you hear somebody my age talking about conventions of the past, they're like, "Oh, the good old days. Things were so much better." That is not true. 100%. Things are so much better now. Um, Conventions have gotten more diverse, they have gotten safer, they have gotten more inclusive. Everything that has changed that I have seen has been for the better. I mean, I came up in the era of yaoi paddles, and if you don't know what that is, good and lucky for you. So everything that has happened, in my opinion, has been a vast improvement. But maybe some of you haven't been to a convention before and you're like, oh no, there's etiquette. I am very nervous that I might commit a faux pas. That's understandable, but I'm going to give you some basic guidelines around cosplaying and taking photos and having photos taken of yourself, as well as a few things on how to advocate for yourself in those situations. So let's start with photography. This goes for everybody. If you are a photographer by trade or by hobby and you have equipment, or even if you just like taking photos of other cosplayers with your phone, I know that I do. There are still some pretty basic ground rules. And the first one I'm pretty sure you all can figure out, which is ask permission. I know that candid shots can seem kind of cool, but so many of us put so much work into our costumes. It's understandable if somebody wants to make sure that when their images go out, they're presenting their costume and their work in the best way possible. So make sure that you ask before you take a picture of someone. If it's a situation where it's a big con and there are lots of people surrounding a cosplayer or a cosplay group taking pictures, it's probably fine to hop in there and take a photo without distracting everyone and waving for their attention. Although it is sometimes nice to just hold up your phone and point at it so that you can get a nod confirming that it's okay. Um, Another thing to bear in mind is it's not okay to interrupt somebody if they're taking a break. A lot of costumes can be physically exhausting to wear, especially something that's larger, like a mascot costume or anything involving armor. So if somebody has sat down and they've removed part of their costume, and especially if they're taking a food or water break, just let them be. It's fine to compliment their costume, it's fine to tell them they look great, but please don't make someone get up, put everything back on, put the gloves back on, put the fangs back in, and pose for you, and then try to go back to their break. A lot of people will be very nice about this because we all want to be accommodating and we all want to be nice and support everybody else's good time, but it's exhausting and it's generally not a great idea to interrupt somebody like that. If that happens to you, feel free to say, thank you, but I'm on a break right now. Maybe if you want to circle back around in 5 minutes or however long you think it's going to take you, or, I'll be here later if you want to take a photo then, just politely say no and give them the option of taking a photo later if they want to. It's absolutely fine to turn down a photographer anytime you are uncomfortable or you are otherwise occupied. If somebody tries to stop you, and like for instance, my main convention is Dragon Con, which is held in 5 hotels over the entire concourse of downtown Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Um, there are times when I am on one corner of downtown Georgia and I need to go 3 blocks in the other direction to make it to what I'm doing on time. And there are times when I have to say, I'm sorry, I have to make it to an event. Hopefully we can catch up later and keep moving. It's absolutely okay, and everyone understands if you have to turn a photo down. If you are able to take photos and you want to take a photo with someone, that's great. I love taking selfies with amazing cosplayers, whether or not I'm in cosplay myself or not. But the one thing that you really want to keep in mind is the golden rule, which is if it's not yours, don't touch it. That also applies to people. Now, if you're like, oh, I'm here at this convention and I'm dressed as Jinshi from Apothecary Diaries, and I want to recreate that magical moment where he picks Mao Mao up and he carries her, and I want a photo of that, and you see a Mao Mao cosplayer, they might be up for that. They might absolutely enjoy that idea, but ask them. Don't scoop someone up in your arms without their permission. Has happened to me many, many years ago. Things have gotten better because we have learned these things over time. Um, so, just ask for permission, and also accept rejection gracefully. The thing to keep in mind is a lot of costumes, a lot of props can be pretty delicate. They can be made out of delicate materials. They can be made with certain grip points on them, whereas other parts are more delicate. So if someone's like, oh, I'd rather not hand you my bow to hold in this photo, that's okay. And it's also all right to be like, oh, I'm sorry, it's fragile. I'd rather keep my hands on myself. Um, Another thing to keep in mind is conventions tend to get really crowded and have a lot of foot traffic, and walkways can become really, really congested. So if you see someone and you're like, oh my God, they look amazing, I have to have a photo, but they are going in a direction, it's okay to stop them, but say, would you mind stepping over here to take this photo? So just step out of the flow of traffic. Also, you'll get better photos that way instead of just seeing this like red sea of people parting around them. You can get them in front of a more blank backdrop and get really good photos of what they look like. And if you are stopped, by all means, be like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. Let's step over here. Just guide them away so that it doesn't cause a huge traffic jam and make everybody grumpy with you. When you are working with a photographer who might have more professional equipment, understand that the photos they are taking, and this is a US law thing, copyright is actually one of the things that I work in my professional life, that belongs to them. That is their intellectual property. Now, most photographers, all photographers, really, in my experience, are happy to share their photos with you. However, if you're going to be using them for promotional materials, like if you may have seen the images that were uploaded of my costumes, some of those were taken by people who have photography businesses. And I did have to ask before using those for promotional images if they were okay with that, which they absolutely were, because this is a free event for a college. I mean, not a lot of people are going to say no to that. If you get to the point in your cosplay career where you're being asked to guest at a convention or you're being asked to set up a booth in the cosplay alley, that gets a little more push and pull on that. Absolutely do not try and sell an image, even if it is an image of you that you did not take, unless you have a written agreement from the photographer telling you that that is okay. If you have paid a photographer to take cosplay photos of you that you want to put on your Patreon or sell prints of in the artist alley. So long as you have a written contract saying that that's okay, that's great. But please do not try and take someone else's imagery and then turn around and sell it. It's not cool. Um, Now, if you're not at that type of quote unquote professional cosplay, or just at that point in cosplaying, which I'm gonna be honest, I've never gotten there. It's not something that interests me. Like I don't compete, I don't guest, except I'm making exception for this for a very old friend. Um, but you might still work with some photographers who have a business or something just more professional photography. And I know that it's really, really exciting the first time that you do that, and you want to get the images right away. But it is not good form to ask for the raw, unedited images. Wait for the photographer to do their work. It's the same thing as when a cosplayer is like, okay, let me strike a nice pose before you take this image because you want the best representation of your work. For the photographer, that work that they put into post-production and editing of the photos is essential to their art form. So give them a bit of time. You know, I have literally waited months for photos sometime. Um, that's just how it falls out when you are doing things as just a trade, as favors. You know, if someone has been paid money, you can expect things to be turned around more quickly. But if it's just, you've got a friend who has some nice equipment and wanted to take photos of you at the convention or in another setting, give them a bit of leeway. We all have lives outside of this hobby. Another thing to keep in mind is having a handler with you. So this goes for a couple different things, but in terms of photography, uh, this is going to sound like a true crime podcast, but don't go to a secondary location unless you have a buddy. For example, here in Houston, our convention center is right across the street from a really beautiful park. So during conventions, it's pretty normal for cosplayers to walk across the street with a photographer and get some really neat looking photos. But take a buddy with you. If you are at a convention that is attached to a hotel or is held in a hotel, and a photographer's like, I found this really cool spot that's over here. Let's go take photos there. There's less people. By all means, go. Take your buddy with you. And if you are competing or you are in any sort of fashion show or event, it's not necessary that you bring a handler with you, but check and see if they will allow a handler, because if they won't, that's an unsafe environment. That's more of a rare occurrence. I only really know of one convention where that's been a concern, but safety, safety first. Hydrate, bring your buddy. It's like kindergarten, we can all do it. So let's switch over to talking about being a cosplayer and what you can expect on that side of things as well. So having a handler also goes for just walking around the convention. If you're wearing something like this, you probably don't need a handler, but if you're in anything that has like a big pair of wings attached to it or sizable armor that comes out from your body a distance or anything that's going to obscure your vision, having a handler really helps and is a great idea for your own safety as well as for others, because the last thing you want to do is to be in the vendor hall in a costume that has some sort of width to it that you're not spatially aware of, turn around quickly when you hear your name called, and knock over somebody's entire display. It's entirely possible. It happens a lot. Just bring a handler with you to make sure that somebody is keeping an eye on what's around you. Also, in that vein, be careful around any sort of to use a D&D term, difficult terrain. For example, a friend of mine just a couple years ago was going up an escalator in this beautiful flowing gown, and the escalator ate the train of her gown. Fortunately, her handler was there and was able to pull the dress out before she got injured. But there were a few moments there where she was afraid she was going to get really, really hurt. So always have a buddy, always have a handler. Also, if you're going up the escalator and you can't pick up your train yourself, have somebody else do it. Escalators are terrifying in certain cosplays. Um, Speaking of large costumes, when you have one, make sure that you practice wearing it. I mean, just like you would walk to break in your cosplay shoes, if you're wearing something that's got, large pauldrons that come out to here or big wings that come out the back, something that makes the body that you inhabit every day suddenly a different size and shape, you want to make sure that you sort of develop that sense of where these things might be so that you're not constantly bumping into other people in a crowded situation. Also, maybe get a gauge for the convention that you're going to and figure out when and where that costume might be appropriate. Like, I've been to conventions where wings are forbidden in the dealer's hall. Excuse me, and I think that's a great idea because they can be engines of chaos. I was actually when Regina and I met, I was a professional fairy at the Texas Renaissance Festival, and I destroyed so many things wearing wings, including myself a couple of times. You have to be very, very careful with those. But also, with that in mind, if you see someone who is in a sizable costume and you're like, that's amazing, I really want to get a closer look, don't sneak up on them. Make sure they are aware of your presence because then you become the victim of the wings. And wing victims are many, and unfortunately, you may not be entitled to compensation. I see that I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try and get through the rest of this quickly. So one of the biggest things about cosplay I saw was already covered on the website for these events, which is cosplay is for everybody and cosplay is for every body. It doesn't matter what size or shape or height you are. It doesn't matter what skin tone you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. You are absolutely allowed to cosplay whatever character that you want to. And you don't have to feel constrained like, oh, I'm too skinny to be Thor. It doesn't matter. Absolutely doesn't matter. Be Thor if you want to be Thor. If you love Thor, go for it. That said, be respectful of cultures and characters that are outside of your race and are outside of your background. So, if I wanted to cosplay from the Apothecary Diaries, I wanted to wear a beautiful hanfu, that would be okay. If I wanted to put on makeup to try to make myself look Chinese, not okay. Not appropriate. That's yellow face. That's not cool. It's just off the table. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's no cosplay Olympics in terms of fandom. If you see somebody and they are dressed as a character, it's not cool to try and quiz them on everything about that entire fandom. Sometimes people might just be like, oh, I think this is a cool design and I want to make this costume. Or they might be part of a group cosplay that their cosplay partners wanted to put together and it's not really their fandom. I was recently invited to be part of a Borderlands group. I've never played Borderlands. I, being immersed in nerd culture as I am, have a general idea. But if you were like, hey, who is the third boss in Tiny Tina's Wonderland? I have no idea. I could not tell you. I just think it would be really, really funny to be Claptrap, and that's what I want to do. And in that vein, if somebody has invited you to give them feedback on their costume, that's amazing, and congratulations, because they respect you as an artist. If you haven't been invited to give that feedback, keep it to yourself. It's one thing to sit down and talk shop. Like, one of my favorite things about doing the fashion show at DragonCon is being surrounded by other makers and talking about how we made the things that we made and being able to tell somebody, oh, I learned timbre beating for this. Here's where you can go on YouTube to learn to do it too. But it would never be okay for me to look at somebody else and be like, I would have used Warbler for that. I would have used a thermoplastic. I don't work in EVA foam. Oh, I definitely would have French seamed that instead of serging it. Like, that is not cool. You know, we are not, unless we are fulfilling that role for the convention, we're not judges out of masquerade. We are not there to tell other people where they went wrong or what they can do better, unless they're like, hey, I really like what you did. Can you tell me how you did it so that I can do this differently? Um, so critique when asked. If you haven't been asked, don't. Also, if somebody's cosplaying a character and you think something is missing from their costume, they don't need to know that. Don't walk up to Cloud Strife and be like, "Where's your Buster sword?" Left it at home. Didn't make it. Didn't have time. Isn't a prop builder. Doesn't matter. Um, and I think the biggest thing that I want to leave you with in terms of cosplay safety is just learn to say no. I know it's really hard. I have a hard time with it myself. It's something that I have literally practiced over the course of my life. If you're not comfortable, and that goes with emotionally as well as physically. Sometimes you're just tired. Wearing a cosplay for many hours a day can get physically exhausting. If you're like, "Oh, I can't get back on my feet right now," or I feel gross and I don't want my photo taken, that's okay. You can say no to that. If you're not comfortable doing something, if a photographer is like, "Hey, let's go across the street to the park," you can bring your buddy with you, and you're like, "Oh, but it is Houston in July and it's 109 degrees out there. I don't want to do that." You can still say no, even if they're being nice, even if they're being accommodating. And if you're like, "Oh, I just don't know how," you're going to feel silly doing this, but practice in the mirror. Look yourself in the eye in the mirror and be like, "Oh, thank you, that's really sweet, but I just don't think I can do that right now." And it's fine to script things for yourself. If you don't feel like you can, on the spur of the moment, come up with an appropriate rejection, it's fine to make yourself a list of excuses and memorize them and talk to your mirror and be like, "Oh, I have to get to a panel, but I appreciate it." Or, "I'm sorry, I have to go meet a friend." It's always okay to give yourself an out. And on that note, I only have about 4 minutes left in the meeting time, so I think I'm going to give myself an out. Thank you again to Regina and to Ian and Mew for inviting me to be part of this. I hope you found it informative, and happy cosplaying. Bye, everyone.